Alright, so basically what this is going to be, and ignore these because these are invalid. That was a test run, and what this is basically a proof of concept for a Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn draft race. That's the word I was looking for. And the reason that this thing that I had up here initially is not going to happen is that I don't think that is a good way to set this up. And what I mean by that is I think we can switch two things. One, Taranea is no longer going to be free. Instead, Jill's going to be free. I will defend my reasoning behind that before I go on and do this hypothetical draft. Basically, I think also, thank you tiermaker.com, obviously, for being a good website that I can do this on. So the reason I'm just going to go through this and actually justify all of these. Obviously, these people are not playable characters, so that's why they're in the not playable section. The only character who is banned is Har. Why? Because even if we made Har free, obviously, if we made Har pickable, I think you can make an argument for making Har pickable in a two-person draft race, because, one person gets Har, one person gets Jill. That seems reasonable. But in anything above two-person, first player gets Har, second player gets Jill, what the hell does the third player get? Right? Like, come on. And if we made him free, my thinking is just that he would trivialize all of the Grail Mercenaries picks. The entirety of part 3 and most of part 2 would just be nothing. Nobody cares because Har's just going to solo every map in 2 seconds, and it's going to be boring to watch and to play, frankly. I mean, not really. Har's pretty fun to play with, but it's going to be boring to watch, I imagine. If you disagree, you can let me know, and then maybe we can consider just making Har and Jill both free, but that seems, I don't know. And we'll get to why Jill's free, but we'll get to that last. Ike's free because he's a main lord, obviously. Soth is free because part 1 seems like it would just be completely impossible without him, or at least needlessly difficult, and he's not going to really make much of a difference beyond part 1. Edward and Nolan are free for similar reasons. The prologue of part 1 and chapters 1 and 2 I believe are literally... Chapter 1 is definitely literally impossible without using Nolan and Edward. And if chapters 2 and 3 aren't impossible, they are unbelievably tedious. And, you have to draw the line somewhere between wanting the game to be interesting, like wanting the drafting to be interesting, and not wanting the game to be just horribly tedious. So we're making them automatic. Micaiah is automatic because she's also a main lord. And before we get to Jill, we're actually going to make a few other mentions. I think for this, and so just to preface also, this is just proof of concept. This is all subject to change. I just want to sort of try this out and see if this works. And the inspiration for this was I was watching, Mecha and Kirby Masta and Cyanyo and Gwimpage. Jesus Christ. Gwimpage, no disrespect, doing their draft race of Path of Radiance. And I think at some point someone in Mecha's chat asked, basically, will you guys do a draft race of Radiant Dawn? Radiant Dawn's my favorite Fire Emblem game. It's one of my favorite games of all time. So obviously something I want to see. And Mecha said something to the effect of, we'll do it if we can figure out how, which is completely reasonable because draft racing this game seems like a nightmare. Just in terms of figuring out who's allowed, who's not allowed, when, because you have all these different characters showing up and not showing up at different key moments, right? So, to add to that, we have Alencia, Nephany, Braum, and where's Lucia? Lucia, spoilers, and anyone else? So these are the ones I've thought of thus far, and there might be more. I've considered... Oh, and Nyla, yes. I've considered Tormod and Muarim. That might actually be necessary as well. What I'm saying is that these characters are basically... So, prologue... Oh, and the Black Knight, right. And so I guess we'll just go chronologically. In the Part 1 chapter with just Micaiah and the Black Knight, obviously the Black Knight needs to be allowed. But I am making the Black Knight draftable, because I think that, choosing to use him in those specific chapters that he shows up other than that one chapter could be very interesting, right? So I think that would be cool. Nyla, I am making Nyla free for the swamp chapter in part 1 only because I think it is literally impossible to avoid her at least seeing combat on enemy phase. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, and I'll look into it when we get to that chapter, but I'm pretty sure that it's just impossible. Lucia, I'm making free for, I mean, part 2 I've considered just saying like fuck it, everyone's free, because part 2 is such a clusterfuck of which units you have access to at any time. And honestly, maybe I'll just do that. Maybe I'll just say part 2 everyone's free, just ignore it. But I don't think so. I think it's more interesting. Well, actually, because that could add another strategic layer, right? Where it's like you can use Har and just throw a bunch of bonus XP into Har to skip part 2 endgame, but you don't get to use him for the rest of the game, and that's bonus XP that could have gone to a different unit, to one of your actual drafted units. So I'll think about that. But, if not, then these guys are all free in the chapters where they show up in part 2, or at least the first chapters that they show up in. For Lucia, the only chapter. And I think that's everyone. I think everyone else pretty much is fair game. Oh, and Joffrey. Yeah, Joffrey's free in his chapter in part 2 as well. Now, so to start the actual drafting, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draft character. Oh, and Jill. I haven't gotten to my justification for Jill. My justification for Jill is this. If we're banning Har and we have 4 people, we either have to ban Jill or we have to make her free. Because if one person can pick Jill, that person is going to win. It's as simple as that. Jill will absolutely shit on part 1 and part 3 Dawn Brigade chapters, and everyone who doesn't have Jill will be screwed. So I could just ban Jill and let everyone slog through the Dawn Brigade chapters, but frankly, I think the Dawn Brigade chapters are hard enough with Jill. And, we can look into that too, see about making it more interesting, because, I mean, honestly, using Jill takes out most of the challenge of playing Dawn Brigade at all. But, I mean, also, drafting Dawn Brigade isn't even that interesting, right? I mean, maybe you'll want Volug, and maybe you'll want to draft Nyla for the chapters that aren't the Swamp chapter where she's free, and maybe you'll want to draft, like, Tormod Muarim, but, I mean, you already have this core 4 for free, right? And you can't not have them for free unless I want to say, okay, Edward and Nolan are free for, like, the first 3 chapters, which seems just needlessly pedantic at that point. So I think making Jill free is the best way to do this. Obviously, if you disagree, share that opinion. I'm trying to make this as good a rule set as I can, and I'm interested in as many opinions as I can get on this. That being said, we can get into the hypothetical drafting, and I just want to get out in front of this and say I'm not going to go super in-depth, hardcore trying to draft. And also, my first pick and my second pick and whatever is not necessarily going to be who I think is the best and second best and third best characters in the game. It's going to be who I think are going to be the fastest in a draft race context. So, someone like Titania might go first. All hypothetical. And then someone like... I don't even know. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Radiant Dawn. Radiant Dawn's weird. Radiant Dawn's hard to figure out. Marsha? Is Marsha going to go second? She's not nearly as good in Radiant Dawn as she is in Path of Radiance. She's basically a god in Path of Radiance. Best unit in the game, probably. Although maybe Titania's better, but Marsha's really fucking good. Kieran, similar. Not as good. Oscar, not as good. But also all still pretty solid units. Oscar's much better than Kieran in this game, though. He's better than Kieran in Radiant Dawn, or in Path of Radiance as well. Tabarn is an incredible time saver in part 4, in his 2 chapters in part 4, and he's really good in the tower, but is that enough to warrant a second pick? I don't think so. I think you'd rather... we'll just put Marsha. It doesn't matter. Again, this isn't super well thought out. This isn't a tier list. This is just sort of going for hypotheticals of how we might want to play this. I'll say so, yeah, player 3 picks Tabarn. And so you'll notice that's why I'm not picking Dancers, because they are good units in like an LTC context and just generally good units, but they're slow, right? Sometimes you would rather just take another enemy phase than wait for a dancing animation, depending on the context. Nesala, these guys, like, obviously super late game biased, but we're just sort of spitballing here. Boyd's pretty good in Radiant Dawn. Boyd's actually quite good in Radiant Dawn. I'm not that good at using him though, but we'll throw Boyd in there. Why not? And then maybe you want Zahark because he's a pre-promote that you get in part 1. Oh no, you know what? You'd probably rather have Tornado. Less availability, but so good in part 1. That'll really shore up your part 1 weaknesses. This person also wants to shore up their part 1 weaknesses with Volug, and player 1 will want to. They've already got a pretty solid part 3 between Ike and Titania, so they might want some part 1 action as well, or even some consistent part 2 strength with Braum. But actually, you'd probably rather have Nephany, because people like to shit talk Nephany because she's not good in Path of Radiance. She's quite good in this game. She's not like an excellent unit, but she's quite good. She has lances. She doesn't start with E rank lances. That's a big bonus. Let's see. And then this person gets to pick again, and that's a pretty solid part 2, part 3. So now you definitely want to shore up part 1. So maybe you'll get Zahark. And then you will get. You're also going to probably want to shore up part 2. You'll grab Braum. You probably won't grab Braum, actually. That seems. You want too badly to shore up part 2 at that point. I don't know if that's how you want to deal with that. Maybe you'll grab Oscar. Oscar is pretty good. Get some but Cavaliers kind of get shafted in late game in this game. And you've already got Marsha. You've got a flyer, so you might just want infantry. Maybe you'll get Mia. Is Mia better than Oscar? I think Mia is better than Oscar in this game, actually. Cavaliers really. Oh, but Oscar has Earth Affinity, which means he gets disgusting support bonuses with Ike. So we'll go Oscar, and then this person will get Mia because their part 3 is looking pretty weak. And this person will get. Maybe they want Canagus to just really shit on the tower. Get back a lot of time there. That could actually be an interesting strategy, right? You just stomp the tower, but actually you'd rather have Nyla because you get her in part 1 endgame as well. Is that enough to just... Oh, yes, because you also get her in part 4. So a much better pick in Nyla than Canagus. And similarly, Skrimir would be a better pick because you want those desert chapters, but you already have Naysala on this person. So those desert chapters in part 4 are pretty locked up. So maybe you don't care so much about getting Skrimir, and you care about getting some other strong units. Your part 1's looking kind of shabby. Your part 1's not going to be looking so shabby if you add Tormod to that. You might rather add Muarim. You might prefer to add Muarim. Is a better unit for sure. You've got Gauge to worry about, but even untransformed, Muarim's really strong. So yeah, that'll shore up your part 1 weaknesses a little bit. And this person's going to add Janef for part 3. You've got Tornado for part 1, part 3. Yeah, no, why not, right? And at this point, I'm just going to throw in people who I think are decent units. Alincia's free in her chapters in part 1. Alincia can be good in the tower if you give her Dragon Foe, which I don't remember how to get, so maybe you won't be giving her Dragon Foe, but at this point I'm just throwing shit in here. Just for the sake of... I might, frankly, completely screw myself by doing this. I might get into the run and say, I should have paid more attention to those deeper picks because I needed... I really needed... You need a lot more depth in this game in the draft than you do. Skrimir's better than Gifka. But actually, we'll give Skrimir here just because I want to have some balance, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to just use a random number generator and pick one of these at random and try to do a full playthrough with it just to test viability. And what I might find is that I really do need that depth of the roster more than I thought I did. And that one of these, and unfortunately whichever one I pick, is going to be completely screwed. I hope that's not the case. But it could be. It could happen. We'll see. I mean, if it does, it's not like this is actually a draft race run. It's all proof of concept, so it's whatever. Alright, so now we're going to head over to random... I'll just go random number generator. We don't need to... You know what? We do need to random.org it, actually. We need to random.org it. We respect the randomness. Min 1, max 4 generates 4. We get this number 4 lineup that seems like something. I don't really know. Let me just go hit that with my snipping tool. Save as draft.png. And that'll go into that folder, my little photos folder. And yeah, that's going to be our lineup that we're going to try to use for this, and we'll see if it works. And if it doesn't, whatever. We'll readjust the rules a bit and figure out what went wrong and try to get it right next time. And I'm going to go record the first episode right now. See ya.